Hello, and thank you for joining me on this journey. Tonight, we will slowly drift into the unfolding story of the Apollo program, humanity's journey from early space race ambition through Mercury and Gemini missions, the engineering of Saturn V, Apollo 11's historic lunar landing, and the continuing exploration that followed. If you enjoy these relaxing moments, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos. But for now, just breathe. Let your body relax, release any tension, and allow your mind to drift. Let's begin. In the opening years of the Cold War, the world settled into a tense division shaped by competing ideologies and accelerating technological ambition. Nations watched each other through the lens of suspicion, yet also through a growing awareness that scientific achievement had become a measure of global influence. Amid this climate, early rocketry research shifted from experimental curiosity into strategic priority, as both superpowers recognized the potential of reaching beyond Earth. Laboratories hidden behind restricted access and test ranges, far from population centers, became the birthplaces of systems that would one day push humanity towards space. Each advancement in propulsion or guidance systems carried implications far beyond engineering, echoing through political offices and military planning rooms. As the Soviet Union achieved early milestones in orbital flight, including the launch of artificial satellites and the first living passenger sent beyond Earth's atmosphere, the United States faced a moment of urgency. These achievements were not only technical victories, but symbolic assertions of capability. In response, American institutions began consolidating research programs that had previously been scattered across military branches and civilian laboratories. This convergence of talent and resources laid the groundwork for a coordinated national effort, one that would eventually form a dedicated space agency in 1958. The creation of this organization marked a turning point, unifying scientific vision under a single mission focused on exploration beyond the atmosphere. Within this emerging structure, engineers and scientists began to imagine pathways toward the moon. Early studies explored propulsion stages capable of escaping Earth's gravitational pull, while navigation specialists examined the precision required for lunar trajectories. Theoretical designs evolved into structured programs, each iteration refining the understanding of what space travel would demand from both machines and humans. Every calculation revealed new challenges, from heat generated during re-entry to the endurance limits of biological systems exposed to microgravity. These were not abstract problems, but immediate obstacles that demanded solutions grounded in experimentation and iteration. Public communication also played a role in shaping momentum. Declarations of technological intent became tools of national identity, signaling a commitment to exploration that extended beyond competition alone. Behind these announcements, teams worked in controlled test environments, firing prototype rockets and analyzing flight data that would determine the next steps forward. Gradually, the idea of reaching the moon shifted from distant speculation into a structured objective supported by engineering roadmaps and sustained funding. The space race, born from geopolitical tension, evolved into a catalyst for innovation that would reshape humanity's relationship with the cosmos. As research programs matured, lessons from early rocket experiments began to converge into practical design principles. Stability during launch, reliability under extreme temperature shifts, and precise orbital insertion became central concerns. Each test flight contributed data that refined future missions, building a foundation of knowledge that would support increasingly complex objectives. The pursuit of lunar exploration emerged not as a single leap, but as a sequence of carefully constructed steps, each dependent on the success of the last. In this environment of urgency and discovery, humanity's path toward the moon began to take form, shaped by competition, yet driven by an expanding vision of what exploration could become. In the early 1960s, the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union intensified as both nations expanded their capabilities in space exploration. Following the Soviet Union's early achievements, including orbital missions that demonstrated reliable launch systems, American policymakers reassessed national priorities in science and engineering. Research institutions, military contractors, and civilian laboratories increasingly operated under a shared awareness that space had become a decisive frontier of technological influence. This environment created momentum for coordinated federal action that would unify scattered programs into a structured national effort. On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy addressed the United States Congress with a decisive statement that would reshape the trajectory of space exploration. He proposed that the nation commit itself to landing a human on the moon and returning them safely to Earth before the end of the decade. The announcement reframed lunar exploration as a national objective requiring sustained scientific, industrial, and political coordination. Rather than presenting spaceflight as an abstract aspiration, Kennedy defined it as a measurable goal tied to urgency and national capability. His declaration reflected both strategic competition and confidence in American engineering capacity, setting in motion one of the most ambitious technological undertakings in modern history. Following the address, the newly formed NASA expanded coordination of research centers, contractors, and academic partners into a unified development framework. Engineering teams were assigned specialized roles covering propulsion design, orbital mechanics, life support systems, and re-entry safety. Facilities in Houston, Huntsville, and Cape Canaveral became central hubs for testing and mission planning. Funding increased, enabling rapid advancement in rocket design and computational modeling. Engineers refined multi-stage launch concepts capable of overcoming Earth's gravitational pull, while scientists studied human physiological responses to extended space exposure. Each development cycle produced incremental improvements that brought lunar objectives closer to practical execution. The scale of collaboration reflected a national commitment extending beyond individual projects into a sustained technological campaign. Within this expanding structure, the Apollo program took shape as the primary framework for achieving lunar landing objectives. Early planning emphasized modular spacecraft design, precise trajectory computation, and reliable communication networks capable of operating beyond Earth orbit. Engineers studied propulsion staging strategies that would allow spacecraft to escape Earth's gravitational influence while maintaining structural integrity. Simulation environments were developed to test mission scenarios, including lunar orbit insertion and surface descent planning. Scientific advisors contributed data on lunar terrain observations gathered from telescopic studies and unmanned probes. Every subsystem required integration into a cohesive architecture that balanced performance with safety constraints. The program represented a shift from experimental flight testing to mission-oriented engineering with clearly defined milestones. As momentum increased, rivalry with the Soviet Union continued to influence both public perception and internal planning. Each new announcement from abroad intensified efforts to accelerate domestic capabilities, reinforcing urgency behind Apollo's objectives. Scientific communities responded with rapid innovation cycles, improving guidance systems, propulsion efficiency, and spacecraft reliability. Universities expanded aerospace engineering programs, training a new generation of specialists prepared to support long-term exploration goals. Public engagement grew as space exploration became a symbol of technological progress and national identity. The foundations were established for human missions extending beyond Earth orbit and eventually reaching the lunar surface, marking a defining transition in exploration history. Before sustained human presence in space could be considered achievable, engineers first had to determine whether the human body could survive even brief exposure beyond Earth's atmosphere. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Project Mercury emerged as the United States' initial structured effort to answer that question through controlled missions. The program focused on sending a single astronaut at a time into space inside a compact capsule designed for ballistic flight, re-entry, and ocean recovery. Every subsystem was built around redundancy and simplicity, reflecting the extreme uncertainty surrounding human survival in space. Life support systems regulated oxygen flow and cabin pressure, while heat shields were engineered to withstand the intense friction generated during atmospheric re-entry. Each mission was treated as a stepwise experiment, producing data that would inform all future spaceflight architecture. On May 5, 1961, the first American human spaceflight took place when Alan Shepard launched aboard the Mercury capsule Freedom 7. The flight followed a suborbital trajectory, reaching space for a brief period before returning to Earth in a controlled descent. Although the mission duration was short, it provided essential confirmation that a human could endure launch acceleration, microgravity exposure, and re-entry forces. The spacecraft's systems performed within expected parameters, and recovery operations in the Atlantic Ocean demonstrated the feasibility of retrieving astronauts after splashdown. Shepard's flight marked a critical milestone in validating crewed spaceflight technology for the United States, reinforcing confidence in the Mercury design approach and its engineering assumptions. In February 1962, attention shifted dramatically when John Glenn became the first American to orbit Earth aboard the spacecraft Friendship 7. Unlike earlier suborbital missions, this flight required precise orbital insertion, sustained communication with ground stations, and careful management of spacecraft attitude control systems. As Friendship 7 circled the planet multiple times, telemetry data streamed continuously to tracking stations around the globe, confirming the stability of both the astronaut and the vehicle systems. Glenn reported observations of Earth's surface from orbit, while mission controllers monitored vital systems, including oxygen levels, temperature regulation, and fuel usage for orientation thrusters. The mission demonstrated that orbital flight was not only possible, but operationally manageable within the constraints of early spacecraft design. By the time the final Mercury missions were underway, spacecraft reliability had improved through iterative testing and engineering refinement. In 1963, Gordon Cooper completed the last Mercury flight aboard Faith 7, remaining in orbit for over a day. This extended duration provided valuable data on human endurance in microgravity and the performance of life support systems over longer timeframes. Engineers observed how orbital mechanics affected communication windows, power consumption, and thermal regulation as the spacecraft moved between sunlight and Earth's shadow. Cooper manually controlled portions of the flight when automated systems showed irregularities, demonstrating that human intervention remained essential in early spacecraft operations. Across all Mercury missions, a clearer understanding emerged of how humans adapt to space environments and how spacecraft must be designed to support them. Recovery operations became more efficient, orbital tracking networks expanded, and biomedical monitoring techniques advanced rapidly. Each flight contributed to a growing foundation of knowledge that would directly support more complex missions beyond Earth orbit. The success of Mercury established not only technical feasibility, but also operational confidence, setting the stage for multi-crew missions and the transition toward lunar exploration systems that required far greater precision and coordination. As human spaceflight transitioned beyond proof-of-concept missions, attention shifted toward developing the skills required for complex orbital operations. The United States initiated Project Gemini to bridge the gap between early single astronaut flights and the demands of lunar exploration. Designed for 2 crew members, the spacecraft introduced longer mission durations, improved maneuvering capability, and systems capable of supporting extravehicular activity. Engineers focused on solving challenges related to orbital alignment, docking precision, and human endurance in microgravity over extended periods. Each mission became a practical laboratory for testing procedures that would later be essential for reaching and operating around the Moon. From the perspective of mission control, Gemini represented a shift in operational complexity. In 1965, Virgil Grissom and John Young conducted the first crewed Gemini flight aboard Gemini 3. During this mission, manual spacecraft maneuvers replaced earlier reliance on fully automated systems, allowing astronauts to directly influence orbital changes. Although brief, the flight demonstrated that human crews could actively control spacecraft orientation and trajectory in orbit. This capability became fundamental for future rendezvous and docking operations, where precise adjustments would determine mission success. Advancing further into orbital complexity, Gemini 4 introduced a defining moment in American space history when Edward White performed the first American spacewalk. Using a handheld maneuvering device and tether system, he exited the spacecraft and remained outside in microgravity while traveling at orbital velocity. The extravehicular activity revealed significant engineering challenges, including limited mobility, temperature variation across spacecraft surfaces, and the difficulty of maintaining stable body positioning without fixed reference points. Communication between White and mission control provided continuous updates as he moved alongside the spacecraft, marking a new stage in human interaction with the space environment. During subsequent missions, docking experiments became a central objective. Gemini 8, crewed by Neil Armstrong and David Scott, achieved the first successful docking between a crewed spacecraft and an uncrewed target vehicle in orbit. The mission involved rendezvous with an Agena target vehicle, requiring precise synchronization of orbital paths and velocity adjustments. After successful docking, an unexpected thruster malfunction caused uncontrolled rotation, forcing an emergency response. Armstrong regained control using re-entry thrusters, demonstrating the importance of redundancy and pilot skill in spacecraft safety systems. The incident highlighted the unpredictable nature of space operations and the need for robust contingency planning. In parallel with docking achievements, Gemini missions extended human endurance in space. Flights such as Gemini 5 and Gemini 7 examined physiological responses to long-duration exposure in microgravity. Gemini 7, in particular, remained in orbit for nearly 2 weeks, serving as a target vehicle for rendezvous practice, while also functioning as a medical and engineering testbed. Astronauts experienced muscle fatigue, circadian rhythm disruption, and gradual adaptation to weightlessness, all of which were carefully documented for future mission design. Engineers used this data to refine life support systems and mission timelines for extended lunar voyages. By the conclusion of the Gemini program, orbital rendezvous, docking, and extravehicular activity had transitioned from theoretical concepts into practiced skills. Each mission contributed incremental improvements in navigation accuracy, spacecraft control, and human performance in space. The program established the operational foundation required for lunar missions, proving that spacecraft could meet, connect, and operate together in orbit. These capabilities became essential building blocks for the Apollo missions that would follow, where precision and coordination would determine success on an even greater scale. Rising from the accumulated lessons of Mercury and Gemini, American space engineering entered a phase defined by unprecedented scale and ambition. The next objective demanded a launch system capable of sending astronauts beyond Earth orbit and toward the Moon, requiring levels of thrust and structural integrity never before achieved. Within this context, the Saturn V emerged as the central technological achievement of the Apollo era. Developed under the direction of NASA and its industrial partners, the rocket was designed as a multi-stage system, with each stage engineered to operate under distinct phases of ascent. Its first stage generated immense thrust through clustered engines, lifting the vehicle away from Earth, while upper stages handled orbital insertion and translunar injection. Every component demanded extreme precision, as even minor deviations could compromise an entire mission. Engineers working on the Saturn V program confronted challenges involving vibration control, fuel stability, and structural load distribution during ascent. Computational models, still in early stages compared to modern systems, were supplemented by extensive physical testing and iterative redesign. Facilities such as propulsion, laboratories, and test stands became sites of continuous refinement, where engine firings produced data essential for improving reliability. Guidance systems were developed to maintain precise trajectory control over long distances, ensuring that spacecraft could be directed toward lunar orbit with minimal error. The scale of coordination required for Saturn V production reflected a national industrial effort spanning thousands of specialists across multiple disciplines. Within the broader Apollo framework, the Apollo program advanced steadily toward crewed lunar missions. Spacecraft design efforts focused on integrating command modules, service modules, and lunar landers into a cohesive architecture. Each subsystem required rigorous testing under simulated space conditions, including vacuum exposure and thermal stress evaluation. Engineers prioritized redundancy in critical systems such as navigation, communication, and life support to reduce the likelihood of catastrophic failure. As development progressed, the program became a symbol of both technological achievement and intense operational pressure, with timelines tied to national objectives established years earlier. In January 1967, a routine ground test at Cape Kennedy marked a turning point in the Apollo program's history. Inside the command module designated Apollo 1, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee were conducting preparations for a launch rehearsal when a fire ignited inside the cabin. The spacecraft's pure oxygen environment at high pressure contributed to the rapid spread of flames, overwhelming the crew's ability to respond. Communication with ground personnel was abruptly lost as conditions inside the capsule deteriorated. The incident resulted in the loss of all 3 astronauts and brought the program to an immediate halt. Following the accident, NASA initiated a comprehensive investigation to determine the technical and procedural causes of the tragedy. Engineers identified multiple contributing factors, including flammable materials within the cabin, design limitations in the hatch mechanism, and the risks associated with the pressurized oxygen environment used during ground operations. The findings led to extensive redesign efforts across the Apollo spacecraft, including replacement of interior materials with fire-resistant alternatives, redesign of the hatch to allow rapid emergency opening, and revision of testing protocols to improve crew safety during simulations. These changes were implemented across all subsequent spacecraft production lines. Across engineering centers and contractor facilities, the impact of the Apollo 1 tragedy reshaped design philosophy for human spaceflight. Safety verification became a dominant requirement, with increased emphasis on independent review and testing redundancy. While the Saturn V development continued, integration with crewed spacecraft systems proceeded under stricter oversight. The loss of Grissom, White, and Chaffee remained a defining moment in the Apollo timeline, reinforcing the inherent risks of human space exploration while also driving substantial improvements in spacecraft reliability and operational discipline. As Apollo preparations resumed, the lessons from this period became embedded in every aspect of mission planning. Structural design revisions, material improvements, and procedural safeguards formed a new baseline for crewed missions. The combination of Saturn V's engineering capability and the restructured safety framework set the stage for renewed progress toward lunar objectives, ensuring that future flights would carry forward both technological advancement and the hard-earned awareness shaped by early sacrifice. Rebuilding confidence in human spaceflight after the Apollo 1 tragedy required a complete validation of redesigned spacecraft systems under real mission conditions. Within NASA's recovery effort, the first opportunity to test the upgraded Apollo Command and Service Module in orbit came through Apollo 7, a mission designed to verify that the extensive engineering changes could support sustained human operation in space. Every system aboard the spacecraft had been modified following the 1967 accident, with emphasis placed on improved safety, reliability, and operational transparency between crew and mission control. The mission represented a critical return to crewed flight activity after a period of intensive redesign and review. Lifting off on October 11, 1968, astronauts Walter Schirra, Don Eisele, and Walter Cunningham became the first crew to fly in the Apollo spacecraft while in Earth orbit. Their mission lasted approximately 11 days, during which the crew conducted a comprehensive series of tests on navigation systems, propulsion controls, and onboard life support equipment. The command module's redesigned systems were evaluated under continuous operational conditions, providing engineers with detailed performance data across multiple mission phases. Inside mission control, engineers closely monitored every transmission from orbit as the spacecraft executed maneuvers designed to test attitude control and engine reliability. Communication systems were evaluated for clarity and consistency, ensuring that data exchange between spacecraft and ground stations remained stable over long durations. Thermal regulation systems were also assessed, as internal cabin conditions fluctuated depending on orbital exposure to sunlight and shadow. These measurements were essential for confirming that the spacecraft could sustain human life safely during extended missions beyond Earth orbit. Throughout the mission, technical anomalies emerged that required onboard assessment and real-time decision-making. Schirra and his crew reported issues related to cabin pressure regulation and minor equipment malfunctions, which were analyzed jointly with ground teams. Despite these challenges, the spacecraft maintained overall operational stability, demonstrating that the redesigned systems could function effectively under continuous use. The crew's ability to manage unexpected conditions provided valuable insight into human interaction with spacecraft systems in dynamic environments. From an engineering perspective, Apollo 7 served as the first comprehensive validation of the Apollo command module's flight readiness. Data collected during orbital maneuvers confirmed improvements in structural integrity, propulsion control accuracy, and electrical system reliability. The service module's engine performance was also tested through controlled firings, verifying its capability for future translunar injection burns. These results played a decisive role in determining that the Apollo spacecraft was ready for missions extending beyond Earth orbit. Across NASA facilities, the success of Apollo 7 restored momentum to the Lunar program. Teams working on subsequent missions used the flight data to refine procedures for navigation, docking preparation, and lunar module integration. Confidence in crewed Apollo systems increased significantly, allowing planners to proceed toward increasingly complex mission profiles. The spacecraft's performance demonstrated that the extensive redesign efforts following Apollo 1 had achieved their intended safety and reliability improvements. In broader terms, Apollo 7 marked a transition point between Earthbound testing and deep space exploration readiness. The mission confirmed that human crews could safely operate the Apollo spacecraft for extended periods while managing both routine functions and unexpected system variations. With this validation complete, NASA moved forward toward missions that would leave Earth orbit, setting the stage for journeys that would extend human presence to the vicinity of the Moon. Momentum within NASA shifted dramatically as confidence in the Apollo spacecraft grew following successful Earth orbit validation. Engineers and mission planners began considering a bold extension of mission scope, sending astronauts beyond Earth orbit to test navigation, communication, and life support in deep space conditions. This decision led to the formation of Apollo 8, a mission that would redefine the boundaries of human exploration by leaving Earth's gravitational influence for the first time in crewed flight history. The objective centered on entering lunar orbit, observing the Moon at close range, and returning safely to Earth using the Saturn launch system. At Kennedy Space Center, the launch vehicle preparation reached unprecedented levels of precision as the Saturn V was readied for its first crewed lunar trajectory. Astronauts Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders boarded the spacecraft on December 21, 1968. As ignition sequence began, the rocket delivered controlled thrust through its multiple stages, gradually accelerating the crew beyond Earth's atmosphere and into translunar injection. Each stage, separation marked a carefully timed transition, ensuring the spacecraft achieved the precise velocity required to reach lunar orbit. Once the spacecraft left Earth's immediate gravitational dominance, navigation systems became essential for maintaining trajectory accuracy over the long journey. Mission Control monitored telemetry data continuously, adjusting calculations based on orbital mechanics and spacecraft performance. Communication delays increased as distance grew, requiring precise coordination between ground stations and the crew. The spacecraft systems, including life support and power regulation, were evaluated under conditions far beyond previous mission ranges. Engineers observed how equipment behaved in extended deep space travel, gathering data critical for future lunar landing operations. As Apollo 8 approached lunar orbit insertion, the spacecraft executed a carefully calculated engine burn to slow its velocity and allow lunar gravitational capture. The maneuver required exact alignment, as even minor deviations could have resulted in mission failure. When successful insertion was achieved, the crew became the first humans to orbit another celestial body. From this vantage point, the lunar surface appeared in sharp contrast, marked by craters, ridges, and ancient impact formations shaped over billions of years. The environment revealed no atmosphere, producing stark lighting conditions where shadows remained sharply defined against illuminated terrain. During multiple orbits, the crew conducted visual observations and photographic documentation of the lunar surface. Among the most significant moments occurred when the spacecraft emerged from behind the Moon and revealed Earth rising above the lunar horizon. This visual perspective highlighted the planet as a small, luminous sphere suspended in the darkness of space. The image captured by Anders became one of the most widely recognized photographs in space exploration history, influencing scientific and cultural perspectives on Earth's place in the universe. Communication between the crew and mission control continued throughout lunar orbit, with detailed reports on navigation stability, system performance, and visual conditions on the lunar surface. The spacecraft maintained operational integrity across all critical systems, confirming that both human crews and mechanical systems could function effectively in lunar orbit. Engineers analyzed performance data to refine future mission profiles, particularly those involving lunar descent and surface operations. After completing multiple lunar orbits, the spacecraft executed a trans-Earth injection burn to begin the return journey. Navigation adjustments ensured accurate trajectory alignment for re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. As distance decreased, communication latency reduced and tracking precision increased. The spacecraft successfully re-entered Earth's atmosphere and completed splashdown in the Pacific Ocean, concluding a mission that extended human presence beyond Earth for the first time. Apollo 8 demonstrated that crewed lunar orbit missions were achievable with existing technology and provided essential validation for subsequent landing missions. The success of the mission confirmed deep space navigation methods, spacecraft endurance, and communication reliability over lunar distances, establishing a critical foundation for future exploration of the lunar surface. By the late 1960s, the accumulated engineering progress from Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo testing converged toward a single objective that had defined a decade of development. Within NASA's operational framework, Apollo 11 was prepared as the mission intended to attempt a crewed landing on the Moon and demonstrate safe return to Earth. Every element of the spacecraft architecture had been validated through prior missions, including orbital rendezvous techniques, extended life support endurance, and lunar orbit navigation. The mission required precise coordination between propulsion systems, guidance computers, and human decision-making under conditions where timing and trajectory accuracy were critical at every stage. From Launch Complex 39 at Kennedy Space Center, the Saturn V ignited on July 16, 1969, carrying astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. As the rocket ascended through the atmosphere, each stage separated in sequence, shedding mass and increasing velocity until Earth orbit was achieved. The final stage then executed translunar injection, placing the spacecraft on a trajectory toward the Moon. During this phase, Collins remained in the command module, while Armstrong and Aldrin occupied the lunar module, preparing systems for eventual separation and descent operations. During the coast toward the Moon, spacecraft systems were monitored continuously for stability in navigation, thermal balance, and communication integrity. Mid-course corrections were performed, using the service propulsion system to refine the trajectory. Inside the lunar module, Armstrong and Aldrin conducted system checks on guidance computers, propulsion valves, and landing radar equipment. Meanwhile, Mission Control analyzed tracking data to ensure that orbital mechanics remained within expected parameters. As distance increased from Earth, communication delays became more noticeable, requiring careful synchronization between crew instructions and ground-based calculations. Approaching lunar orbit, the spacecraft executed a critical engine burn to enter gravitational capture around the Moon. Once stabilized in orbit, preparations began for lunar descent. The lunar module, designated Eagle, separated from the command module Columbia with Armstrong and Aldrin on board, while Collins remained in lunar orbit. After separation, Eagle's descent engine ignited to begin a controlled reduction in altitude. Early in the descent, unexpected computer alarms indicated overload conditions in the guidance system, requiring Mission Control to rapidly assess whether the landing could continue safely. After evaluation, controllers confirmed that the alarms were manageable, allowing the descent to proceed. As Eagle descended closer to the lunar surface, terrain features became increasingly visible, revealing a landscape marked by craters, scattered boulders, and uneven regolith. The onboard guidance system initially targeted a planned landing area, but as altitude decreased, Armstrong observed that the projected landing site contained hazardous rocky terrain. Taking manual control, he adjusted the flight path horizontally to search for a safer landing zone, while monitoring fuel levels that were steadily decreasing. Communication between Armstrong and Mission Control remained steady as the descent continued under increasing time pressure. Near the final phase of landing, fuel reserves approached critical limits, while the lunar module hovered just above the surface. Armstrong guided the spacecraft toward a relatively smooth area within the Mare Tranquillitatis region. With careful adjustments to thrust and orientation, Eagle descended at a controlled rate until contact sensors confirmed touchdown. The engines shut down immediately after landing, stabilizing the spacecraft on the lunar surface. Confirmation from Mission Control verified successful landing, marking the first time humans had reached another celestial body and remained on its surface. After landing, systems checks confirmed that the lunar module was stable and that life support conditions remained within safe operational limits. Armstrong communicated the successful landing, and preparations began for eventual surface operations. Inside lunar orbit, Collins continued monitoring systems aboard the command module, ensuring readiness for rendezvous after surface activities were completed. The mission established the feasibility of human lunar landing and return, demonstrating that precision engineering, navigation accuracy, and human adaptability could converge successfully on a planetary scale. Stepping onto the lunar surface marked the beginning of direct scientific engagement with another celestial body, transforming Apollo 11 from a landing achievement into an active exploration mission. After exiting the lunar module, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin began surface operations in the Mare Tranquillitatis region, a basaltic plain formed by ancient volcanic activity. Their initial tasks focused on verifying environmental conditions, assessing mobility in reduced gravity, and establishing baseline observations of the lunar terrain. Each movement across the surface provided new data about how regolith behaves under low-gravity conditions, including its texture, cohesion, and response to mechanical disturbance. From Mission Control, engineers observed telemetry as instruments deployed by Apollo 11 transmitted the first direct scientific measurements from the lunar surface. A seismometer, solar wind experiment, and laser reflector array were placed to gather long-term data about lunar environmental conditions. These instruments enabled continuous monitoring of seismic activity, particle radiation, and precise Earth-Moon distance calculations. The collected data offered insight into the Moon's internal structure and its interaction with solar radiation, forming a foundation for future lunar geophysical studies. Following the successful completion of Apollo 11's surface activities, NASA refined its approach for subsequent missions to expand scientific capability and landing precision. This advancement became evident during Apollo 12, which launched on November 14, 1969, with astronauts Charles Conrad and Alan Bean aboard the lunar module Intrepid. The mission introduced a new level of navigational accuracy, demonstrating that spacecraft could target specific locations on the lunar surface with high precision. During descent, Apollo 12 encountered unexpected challenges when lightning struck the spacecraft shortly after launch. Despite temporary instrument malfunctions, the crew and Mission Control restored full system functionality, allowing the mission to continue. Once in lunar orbit, the lunar module separated and began its descent toward a predetermined landing site near the Surveyor 3 spacecraft, which had been placed on the Moon by an earlier robotic mission. This objective represented a shift from exploratory landing to targeted scientific retrieval, requiring refined navigation and landing accuracy. As Intrepid approached the surface, onboard systems guided the descent with improved precision compared to Apollo 11. Conrad manually adjusted the final approach to ensure alignment with the designated landing zone. The spacecraft touched down within walking distance of Surveyor 3, confirming that landing accuracy had advanced significantly. This achievement demonstrated that future missions could access specific geological regions for targeted exploration rather than broad regional landings. After landing, Conrad and Bean exited the lunar module and began surface operations focused on sample collection and equipment inspection. One of the primary objectives involved retrieving components from Surveyor 3, including parts of its camera system and structural elements that had been exposed to lunar conditions for over 2 years. Examination of these materials provided valuable data on how long-term exposure to the lunar environment affected mechanical and optical systems. Across both Apollo 11 and Apollo 12, lunar surface exploration evolved from initial demonstration to structured scientific investigation. Astronauts collected rock and soil samples that revealed differences in composition, including variations in basalt formations and mineral content. These findings contributed to theories about lunar formation and geological history. The ability to analyze physical samples directly on Earth after return missions significantly expanded scientific understanding of the Moon's origin and evolution. Mission control teams incorporated Apollo 12's success into planning for future landings, recognizing that precise targeting enabled access to scientifically diverse regions of the lunar surface. Improved navigation techniques, enhanced guidance systems, and refined descent protocols became standard for subsequent Apollo missions. Together, these advancements marked a transition toward sustained lunar exploration, where each landing contributed to a broader understanding of lunar geology and environmental conditions. Midway through the Apollo program's sequence of increasingly ambitious lunar missions, a sudden in-flight emergency transformed a routine journey into one of the most critical survival operations in spaceflight history. The mission known as Apollo 13 launched on April 11, 1970 aboard the Saturn V rocket, carrying astronauts James Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes. The mission's original objective was a lunar landing in the Fra Mauro Highlands, a region of geological interest selected for its potential to reveal early lunar history. Early stages of flight proceeded normally, with Earth orbit insertion and translunar injection executed as planned. Inside the spacecraft during the coast toward the Moon, routine system checks were underway when an unexpected event occurred approximately 2 days into the mission. An oxygen tank within the service module failed, producing a rapid loss of electrical power and life support capability in the command module. The failure immediately eliminated the possibility of a lunar landing and shifted mission priorities toward crew survival and safe return to Earth. Communication between the crew and mission control at NASA became focused on assessing system status and identifying viable emergency procedures under severe resource limitations. As conditions stabilized following the initial failure, the lunar module Aquarius was repurposed as a temporary lifeboat. Designed for lunar descent rather than long-duration independent operation, it was adapted to provide life support, electrical power, and propulsion control for the return trajectory. Engineers on the ground rapidly developed new procedures to manage carbon dioxide buildup, power distribution, and trajectory corrections using limited onboard resources. Carbon dioxide removal systems were modified using improvised configurations assembled from available materials, allowing the crew to maintain breathable air within the confined environment. During the return journey, navigation adjustments became essential to ensure the spacecraft remained on a safe trajectory toward Earth. Without normal command module systems fully operational, course corrections were executed using the lunar module's descent engine in carefully timed burns. Mission Control calculated burn durations and alignment angles, using ground-based simulations and real-time telemetry. Communication delays and limited computational capacity aboard the spacecraft required precise coordination between ground teams and astronauts to execute each maneuver accurately. Within Mission Control at Houston, teams of engineers worked continuously to solve problems as they emerged, often developing solutions under extreme time constraints. Flight controllers organized into specialized groups focused on propulsion, life support, navigation, and power systems, each contributing to a unified recovery strategy. The collaboration between ground-based engineers and the crew in space became a defining feature of the mission's survival effort. Every adjustment to power usage or trajectory was evaluated for its impact on both immediate safety and long-term return capability. Thermal regulation presented another major challenge as the spacecraft drifted through space with limited heating capability. Internal temperatures fluctuated as power conservation measures reduced system activity. Despite these conditions, the crew maintained operational discipline, executing procedures to conserve resources while preserving essential life support functions. The lunar module continued to serve as the primary habitat, despite being originally engineered for far shorter operational periods on the lunar surface. As the spacecraft approached Earth, final trajectory corrections were executed to refine re-entry alignment. The command module, which had remained powered down for most of the return journey, was reactivated for atmospheric entry. The service module was jettisoned prior to re-entry, revealing the extent of damage caused by the oxygen tank failure. The command module then re-entered Earth's atmosphere under controlled descent conditions, guided by heat shielding designed to withstand extreme aerodynamic heating during atmospheric passage. Splashdown occurred in the Pacific Ocean on April 17, 1970, bringing the crew safely back to Earth after days of emergency operations in space. Recovery teams retrieved the astronauts and transported them for medical evaluation, confirming their survival after an extended period under constrained conditions. The mission demonstrated both the vulnerabilities and resilience of human spaceflight systems when confronted with unexpected failure scenarios. It also strengthened confidence in mission control coordination, engineering adaptability, and real-time problem-solving under extreme pressure. Following Apollo 13, subsequent missions incorporated extensive system redesigns, improved redundancy measures, and enhanced emergency preparedness protocols. Apollo 14 through Apollo 17 expanded lunar surface exploration with longer stays, additional scientific instrumentation, and improved mobility systems, including lunar rovers. Apollo 17 concluded the Apollo program in December 1972, marking the final crewed lunar landing mission and completing the first era of direct human exploration of the Moon. Apollo 14, flown by astronauts Alan Shepard, Edgar Mitchell, and Stuart Roosa, returned Americans to the lunar surface in 1971 and demonstrated restored mission confidence after the Apollo 13 incident. Apollo 15 introduced the first lunar roving vehicle, enabling extended exploration range and more detailed geological sampling across varied terrain. Apollo 16 focused on the lunar highlands, providing new insights into ancient crustal formations and impact history. Apollo 17, crewed by Eugene Cernan, Harrison Schmitt, and Ronald Evans, combined advanced scientific instrumentation with the first professional geologist on the Moon, significantly expanding lunar research outcomes. Across the entire Apollo program, engineering innovation, scientific discovery, and operational experience converged to establish a lasting framework for human space exploration. Each mission contributed distinct advancements in propulsion, navigation, life support, and planetary science. The collective legacy reshaped understanding of what could be achieved through coordinated technological effort, extending human presence beyond Earth and into the broader solar system. Beyond the lunar landings, the Apollo experience influenced subsequent spacecraft design, mission control practices, and systems engineering across decades of exploration programs. Advances in computer guidance, material science, and redundancy design became standard in later spacecraft development. The global tracking network established for lunar missions improved deep space communication capability and supported later robotic probes. Techniques refined during Apollo also shaped Earth observation systems and commercial satellite deployment strategies. The collaboration model between engineers, scientists, and flight controllers became a reference point for complex international missions, reinforcing disciplined testing, verification, and iterative design as core principles of space exploration architecture. As our journey through the unfolding story of the Apollo program, from the first sparks of the space race to the monumental achievement of landing on the Moon and the missions that followed, comes to a close, allow yourself to sink even deeper into relaxation. Let the vastness of space and the quiet strength of human achievement surround your thoughts and imagination. Feel your body softening, your breath flowing naturally and effortlessly, and your mind drifting into stillness. If you enjoyed this relaxing moment, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos. But for now, let your body relax, release any tension, and allow your mind to drift. Good night and sleep well.